Just a reminder, students, you are going to your home room. Students, you are going to your home room. If we could get all people who are involved in the Remembrance Day Ceremony to please make their way to the gym now. Classes, you'll be called down shortly in grade 5 and 6, grade 7 and 8. The live feed for the gym portion of the ceremony is on the RIMaker website. Thanks.
That's cool. Good job, Martins. Oh, Martins! Yeah! Oh, it's so dark in here.
So a couple of those here. So you guys want to sit on this side, and then you guys I'm not leaving one. I would just sit on this. Oh, they printed a program? You printed a program?
Yeah, this is Mike. It's got a couple things I'm going to say on there.
All right.
Hi, how are you today? Good, how are you?
How you doing, Josh? You good? All right, I'm going to start the ball.
So, go in that entryway if you want to see, so you know.
Just an FYI, this is streaming in classrooms right now too.
All right, I would like to call down please the grade 5. Thank you.
I'm already having a rough day.
Yeah. Try mine.
Could we please get all grade 6 students to make their way to the gymnasium? Thank you.
running down you gave us so much to go. I never said thank you for that. I won't give it one chance. What would you think of me now? So brave, so strong, so proud. Never said thank you for that. Now we never have a chance. Make angels here you I'm feeling thank you for that. Now the if you would with me tonight, sing to you just one more time. Song for a heart so thin, God wouldn't let it do. They
Please rise for the singing of O Canada. Today, you sit here in comfort. You sit here in peace, and you sit here in freedom. The way we live deserves just more than just one day of thanks, more than just one day of respect. Many men and women gave up their families, their ability to walk, or their life, so we can live in comfort, peace, and freedom. Today we will recognize, understand, respect, and be grateful. Thank you to all the men and women who have served our country.
Le souvenir est fondamental pour définir d'où je viens, qui je suis et où je m'en vais.
I respect Remembrance Day.
Because it's such an important date and such an important time. C'est important de se souvenir.
Not just one single day from the 11th.
That only you want to more out.
I think it's more than just saying, thank you for your service.
It's also about the human side, not just the faceless soldier side.
Remembrance Day invites us to think about Omaha Beach, Juno Beach.
Ce qu'on a fait pour les autres pays.
400,000 people took part in D-Day.
Hill 187.
Stabilization in Congo.
Que c'est un organisme that children in Afghanistan.
The genocide that lasted 100 days.
For me, it's to remember the fallen.
Toutes mes camarades avec qui j'ai combattu.
I remember my husband called over his health. J'ai eu un capitaine, Nicolas Dagard, dans le cœur.
Caporal chef,
Families and civilians and people who have to deal with war in the place where we've been.
I remember World War I veterans when I was growing up.
I remember China's Canadian in World War II.
Ces gens-là ont fait des choses qui sont extraordinaires.
They're the heroes. They gave their life.
La raison pourquoi je suis ici, la raison pourquoi je porte cet uniforme, vient de ce qui a été fait par mes prédécesseurs.
We remember we have Canada today. We thank our forefathers that have gone before us.
I'm not a hero, I'm a survivor.
Pour ces gens-là, ça vaut la peine de se souvenir et de montrer que je restais envers eux.
Le souvenir continue de me propulser, de me motiver et de me convaincre d'accomplir la mission qui est facile. Le souvenir.
I will now ask Jersey Kirkness and Austin Sack to come give their rendition of Flanders Field.
Le souvenir.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the large still gravely sing. Flies screams, heard amid the run below.
We are the dead, short days ago, we live, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, love, and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch, be yours to hold high. If ye break faithless who die, we shall not sleep, the poppies grow in Flanders field.
Mr. Brent Gifford.
I'll hold this, I guess. Kind of a long speech, so I'll take my mask off. Good morning. I was asked to be the guest speaker this year at the ceremony. Normally, I never do these sorts of things, but this year I thought was kind of special, and plus I could never say no to Mrs. Kurtz. So I would like to remind everyone that we are here today to honor the sacrifice of our veterans, especially those who fought in World War I, II, and Korea. The hardship those soldiers had to endure, I don't even want to imagine. I come from a new generation of veterans, the 9/11 generation. I watched that tragedy play out 20 years ago, like many of those here today. I would like to give you an honest account of what I found war to really be like. At 15, in high school, seeing what happened on 9/11 had a profound impact on my future. I was an aimless teenager raised on 80s action movies about what I thought war was going to be like. I joined the Army in the spring of my last year in high school, and my greatest fear was that the fighting would be over by the time I finished and finally got a tour. Depending on how you look at it, my experience in the Army was either very fortunate or very unfortunate. I encountered guys who had been in the battalion for over a decade and still were waiting to go on their first tour. Even those who had gone before, they were nothing like what we were about to be facing. At 18, I shipped out to basic training, and by the time I was 19, I was ready to go to Kandahar to fight the resurgent Taliban. I would spend my 20th birthday in a tent in Afghanistan praying for a solid night's sleep. When I got off the plane in Kandahar, we were marched into a bombed-out Quonset hut that doubled as a hangar. We were given a speech about what to do when a rocket attack occurred, which amounted to laying on the ground with our gear on, and how often we could expect them. There was one later on that evening, and many more after that. At first, I was scared of the rocket attacks, but after one or two, they became more of an inconvenience, and the likelihood of being killed was like throwing darts at a dartboard. So the part that I began to hate the most about them was that they would begin to disturb my sleep, and would inevitably we'd have to get up and get into vehicles to look for who was launching rockets at us in the airfield. In hindsight, I wish this was as dangerous as things would have gotten. The first time I came into serious contact with the enemy was absolutely terrifying. Everything I imagined combat would be, and how I would react, went up in a cloud of smoke that was so ridiculous it would be humorous if it were not so pathetic. The imagined heroism, the dash under fire that you thought you would make without hesitation, all willed when you were taking accurate enemy machine gun fire. I cannot stress how harsh this realization was, as I imagine it was for the other men, that I was not what I imagined myself to be. I was scared, my reactions were muscle memory, and my motivations were self-preservation and not looking like a coward in front of my comrades. I was ashamed about how scared I was. I came to realize immediately the myth of war. The images in movies and films, especially nowadays, can be very graphic, but they never capture what fear under fire is actually like. There are many YouTube channels that have helmet cam footage of combat, and if you compare this to the Hollywood or media versions of what war is with its dramatic death scenes and heroic rescues, you can see why those who are interested in making money rather than showing the truth about war choose to portray the latter. Throughout my tour, what we were trying to accomplish became more and more convoluted. I was under the impression that we were there to help provide security and assistance to the newly installed Afghan government and help train the Afghan army. What that amounted to was driving from village to village, waiting for the Taliban to ambush us, set off roadside bombs, or start a firefight. Everywhere you looked, there was fields of poppies and marijuana. It wasn't even a secret that the governor of Kandahar, who was the president's brother, was one of the biggest heroin dealers in the world. Child sexual abuse among the Afghan officials was rampant and known about. I once witnessed an Afghan soldier machine gun down a deserter in the middle of the night as the man fled because he had not been paid. The AA soldiers that we took on missions with us often stopped fighting or even patrolling to get high on hash or heroin, and the police functioned as a mafia. As the tour wore on, I was anxious to get it over with. By spring, I had seen enough to last me a lifetime. On June 12, 2006, my company was patrolling the Panjwai district of Kandahar, known as the Taliban stronghold. We came to a village and watched as all of the women and children started to flee out of the other end, which is a notorious sign that trouble is about to start. We dismounted from the vehicles and started searching through the village house by house, looking for insurgents. I've often thought about how I would react if, instead of being a 20-year-old Canadian, if I had been a 20-year-old Afghan watching foreign troops search through my family's belongings at home on the suspicion that we were not supportive of our government. As we searched the buildings, we came under fire. I fought our way to the other end of town, and my section commander, Sergeant Maven, as well as another young soldier, Corporal Zerkovich, or Oz we call him for short, and myself set up a flanking position on a building used for drying grapes that we had the Taliban cornered in. As we were supposed to be training the Afghan army to deal with this on their own, the original proposal was to have them do the attack on the building, but as usual, they resorted to getting high under the shade of a tree as the fight went on. In frustration, we were ordered to attack the position and go back to the other men to do a frontal assault. I did not like our chances of success. I was not crazy about walking up to a complex full of Taliban with machine guns, AK-47s, and RPGs. I felt, as I am sure thousands of other young soldiers feel in any war when they are given an order such as this, God take care of me, here I go. I would like to tell you that I gallantly charged the enemy position and single-handedly won the day, but the truth is, the only thing keeping me from breaking down completely was the fear of looking like a coward in front of the other men in the platoon and letting them down. That, and the knowledge that if I actually wanted to live, I'd better get myself together and do this. So I reluctantly started walking up the ditch under the cover of bushes and trees towards the grape drying hut. The hut had slits cut into it so that the sun can dry out the grapes. It was a perfect fortress. I didn't even know what I was going to do and when. The best I came up with was to get as close as I could, throw some grenades, open up with my machine gun, and hope to survive whatever happened next. I got to about 60 meters from the building when a machine gun outside opened up in the grass next to me. He was about the length of my classroom away. I was hit badly. It took a few rounds in the legs, and though I didn't know it at the time, another one in my ballistic vest. Sergeant Maven was somehow unarmed, and I watched as Oz got hit and went down in a heap. I yelled that I'd been hit, and I doubted that anybody heard me over the gunfire. I returned fire from my back, laying down until my machine gun jammed, which wasn't very long. Sergeant Maven made a dash to my position, and he flipped me over like a log to use me for cover to shoot at the Taliban who was shooting at us. Rounds were hitting the dirt so close to my face that the dirt was actually getting in my eyes. All of the men behind us were fighting into the building in front of us with vehicles and rockets as well as machine guns and rifles. And the Taliban in the building in front of us were firing back at our position and the rest of the company behind us, while me, Oz, and Maven were stuck between them, two of us badly wounded. At this point, I basically resigned myself to death. I was in a really bad spot. Sergeant Maven killed the machine gunner, and now we both laid as low as we could, and he tried to do something to help me. I was in really bad shape. I was bleeding so bad that I felt like I was laying in a bathtub filling up with water. I could feel it on my back, see it getting all over me as he tried tourniquets on my legs. He stopped to puke more than once. All around us, a massive firefight raged. Tree branches were falling off from the amount of gunfire, and the bullets were passing through bushes all around us. Explosions rang out, and we could hear screaming, some of it from Oz, some of it from the Taliban, and some of it from our guys trying to communicate with us. My left leg was so badly wounded that it looked like it might just come off if you pulled on it. I had bled so much that it was getting hard to think, and I still thought we were for sure all going to die. Then one of the most heroic things I ever witnessed in my life happened. Master Corporal Chason and the company medic appeared behind me and Maven. I still cannot believe that under that kind of fire, anyone would seriously come for us. The other members of the company made their way to Oz as well. We were still trying. We were still taking accurate enemy rocket, machine gun, and rifle fire. Those men took turns defending us and trying as best they could to save my life, although it was not looking good, and I could tell. I could literally feel my life slipping away. Two of them grabbed my shoulders, and as slow as a baby crawls, they started to drag me back towards Charlie Company. I have no idea how we were not all killed. Bullets missed us by inches at best, rockets exploded overhead, and in the dirt, bushes all around us. The lab was pounding away with 25-meter high explosive cannon rounds, and they made Oz get up and make a run for it under that amount of fire because he was hit in the armpit and could still walk. I was loaded into a vehicle and driven away from the battle. It had been about 45 minutes, but my perception of the situation had changed. I was now sure I would live for some reason, even though the look on the faces of the men around me driving away said something else. I asked for water, and at first they said they would not because I was going for surgery back at the airfield. But as the minutes passed by and it looked increasingly likely that I would be dead before the helicopter could get in there, they gave me a bottle of water and then another. And so as I lay there in the shade of the vehicle, exposed from the waist down, almost dead, I had a chance to reflect on my brief life and how it was ending. The only thing I could think of was what a waste. I thought of the phone call my parents would get in the morning and how it was going to ruin my family. I thought about my sister, who was supposed to graduate high school in a couple of weeks, and how she might take the news. I thought of all the times I daydreamed about moments like this, and how stupid my imagination had been. I was dying, I knew it, and it was not cinematic. The other men tried not to look at me in the face, and I could see them wipe the tears away, both out of sympathy for me, but knowing that this would happen again and again, and because this is what war actually looks like, the next time it might be them laying there like this. The next thing I knew, I was staring at the face of the medic on the Black Hawk helicopter, who was shaking his companion, working on Oz. He's back, he said. I was unloaded back at the airfield and placed on the floor of the hospital on a stretcher, in line with Oz and other wounded soldiers from other battles around the country. After a surgery to stabilize me and some blood to keep me alive, I was flown to a hospital in Germany for wounded veterans. On the way there, we stopped to pick up more wounded soldiers in Iraq. We were stacked in an ambulance, three to a side. I could only see the three soldiers opposite me. One was missing an eye, most of his left arm. The next was burned from head to toe. And the last guy was missing both of his legs. The guy missing his arm and eye was screaming the whole way. They were all around my age. At the hospital, the burn victim was next to me, and I had to listen to the screaming as they changed his bandages. When it was clear that I would survive the flight back to Canada, they wanted to send me to Edmonton to see my family because I was still super sick. I had a bad infection, and aside from the blood loss, my kidneys and organs were failing, and they wanted me to see my family before it was too late. I cannot describe that moment. It was great. When everything is almost taken from you, in the middle of one of the worst places in the world, and then suddenly you find yourself surrounded by family and friends back home in Canada, you are overcome with thankfulness. All of the good things in your life that are typically taken for granted. I was in such bad shape that it looked like I was going to die even back in Edmonton, but for whatever reasons, my kidneys and organs stopped failing. I started getting slightly better every day. My life was completely different now, and I had to totally reinvent myself and try and get on with life. I knew it would be difficult. One of the worst things was seeing how people back home thought of my tour. My mother was under the impression that I was helping build schools in Afghanistan, and my dad likened our tour to a peacekeeping mission. We never built anything, we only destroyed, we never kept peace, there was none to keep. This last summer, I watched as places that we've been fighting and dying over for the last 20 years went back to the Taliban without a fight. The places that we sacrificed so much for were taken one after another in front of all of us on television. I cannot express to you what it feels like to watch a war you fight in slowly be lost over the course of a decade, and then have the final humiliation play out on television. Town after town that friends of mine had fought and died in were now given back as though the war had never taken place. I attended a ceremony years ago where they were presenting a widow and two small children, their husband and father's posthumously awarded medals. Their husband was Bryce Keller, who was shot to death a couple of months before I was wounded. I think about them and what they have gone through and how they must feel. Afghanistan is no better for him dying, and their lives have been ruined. Watching them stand there bawling and receiving a medal and a certificate in place of their father and husband is something that will bother me forever. I watched as friend after friend of mine took their own lives or ruined them. I watched as the Canadian government argued in court that they have no obligation to take care of wounded veterans. And I watched as those running the war swung lie after lie about how progress was being made. So my message to the young people here today is forget about participating in violence. War is organized murder, plain and simple. If you want to make a positive difference in the world, become a nurse, or a teacher, or a paramedic, or a doctor. That is how you can be a hero. Forget about trying to be brave. Nobody is. Even those who are discover that they are not brave all the time, and they secretly wish they never have to be. Please don't take your life here for granted, because you really don't know how lucky you have been. Take some time to remember the sacrifices that have been made. Thanks.
We will now proceed to the cenotaph. We will start from this side of the gym and walk that way in our classes 2 by 2, please. And then once you get there, please gather in your class homerooms.